Chapter 1. Christina's Motorbike. At 11 o'clock one morning, the director of the Museo Nacional de Bellas Artes in Buenos Aires, Leonardo Martinez, asked Cristina Rinaldi to come into his office. "I want to talk to you about an important job I'd like you to do, Cristina. I think you'll be interested in it." "Of course. What is it?" "A museum in Paris wants to send some impressionist paintings to Buenos Aires. I spoke to the Paris museum director, Philippe Maudet, this morning, and he's interested in using our museum to show the paintings. It's an important job. Would you like to do it?" "Of course I would. Great. You know I'd love to see impressionist paintings here in the museum," answered Cristina. "Good. I want you to begin work as soon as you can," the director said. "There is a lot you'll need to do." Cristina felt good all day. She loved impressionist paintings. This new exhibition was wonderful. She couldn't wait to begin. After work, Cristina got onto her motorbike outside the museum. She was feeling good. She had an important new job. The sun was warm on her back, and it was the start of spring weather in the city of Buenos Aires. Maybe tomorrow she could leave her jacket at home. This year, September was warm, and people were already talking about a hot summer. Cristina started her motorbike and felt the warm air on her face as she rode along Avenida del Libertador. She never wore a helmet because she liked the feeling of the wind in her long hair. But her father didn't know that. She remembered his words when he gave her the new motorbike. "Always wear your helmet, Cristina, every time you ride." She hoped her father would never see her without it. Every day at this time, Cristina rode down Avenida del Libertador to the gym at the Recoleta Health Club. Her day's work at the museum was finished, and she was free. She usually forgot about her work as she rode down the Avenida. But today was a little different. She couldn't stop thinking about her new job. Cristina began to slow down for the traffic lights. The traffic in the city center was terrible. She didn't work far from the gym, but the road had so many traffic lights. She stopped and looked into the car next to her. She saw two men in the car. She couldn't believe her eyes. One of the men had a gun. Then he looked out of the window at Cristina. She looked into his eyes, into his dark brown eyes, and for a moment the man looked back. Then he turned his head, and she saw a tattoo of a flower, a red poppy, on his neck. Then she heard the sound of police cars. The man in the car lifted up his gun. Cristina felt afraid. She wanted to go quickly. She tried to start her bike, but she couldn't. Everybody else was moving, but she couldn't. Suddenly, a taxi hit the back of her bike. She fell from the bike onto the front of the taxi, and then down onto the road. Her head hit the road hard. She saw nothing. She felt nothing. She didn't even hear the sound of the ambulance, which took her to hospital. 2 hours later, Cristina was lying in bed in hospital, and her parents were waiting outside her room with a policeman. "Where's her helmet?" asked Mr. Rinaldi, Cristina's father. "I know she had a helmet. She always wore a helmet. She didn't come in here with a helmet, the policeman told him. I can't believe it. She always wore her helmet, Mr. Rinaldi said. Maybe the helmet fell on the road. Maybe the police left it there, Mrs. Rinaldi said quietly to her husband. It's okay. I'm sure she's going to be all right. They waited 10 more minutes before the doctor came to see them. She's lucky, the doctor said. She's going to be okay. You can see her now, but she doesn't remember anything about the accident. The doctor took them into the room where Cristina lay in bed. Cristina's mother and father began to cry. Are you sure she's okay? They asked. Can't we take her home now? No, it's better if she stays here for a few days, said the doctor. Her mother stood by her bed. Come back and live with us, Cristina, she said. It's not safe for you in the city. It's not only the traffic. We hear so many terrible things. Please, Cristina, your room is there for you. Come back, and we'll look after you at home. You can change your job if it's too far to go. Cristina felt angry. She had her own flat in the city center, and her own life. She liked to look after herself. But her parents weren't happy about her staying in the flat on her own after the accident. Cristina couldn't believe her bad luck. She lay in bed listening to her parents. Her father tried some other ideas. How about a flat with your brother, Cristina? He'd like it, and he could look after you. Or maybe your mother could stay with you for some time. Just until you are better. But 2 days later, she went back to her own flat alone. She phoned the museum. I'm okay. I'll be back at work in a week, she told the director. Her mother visited her every day, and Cristina talked to her father every night on the phone. They agreed to let her keep her flat, but there was something they disagreed with her about. They did not want her to keep the motorbike. All of Cristina's family talked about Cristina's bad luck. It's the traffic in the city center, her aunt said when she phoned Cristina. It's the same at 4 in the afternoon and 3 in the morning. Those taxi drivers go too fast, and they don't look, said her uncle, who drove a bus through the city center every day. The story of the accident was in the newspaper, a short story on the 3rd page. Cristina's name and job were there, but there was not a lot about the accident. Cristina's brother cut the story of her accident out of the newspaper and put it on the fridge in his flat. It wasn't every day that his sister was in the newspaper. But Cristina herself was worried. She couldn't remember anything about the accident except the sun on her back when she was riding down Avenida del Libertador. But she wanted to remember. The police were still asking questions. The taxi driver said Cristina was sitting there on her motorbike in the center of the road when the traffic lights were green. The doctor said she was all right, but Cristina felt strange. She got headaches, and she tried hard to remember what happened, to find answers, but she couldn't remember anything. Chapter 2. A Plan to Kill. In another area of the city, Roberto Boccuzzi and his brother Carlos were afraid. They were afraid that the woman on the motorbike who saw their faces would tell the police. Roberto and Carlos had $50,000 from a bank robbery, and now they were rich. But they couldn't enjoy the money because the police were looking for them, and this woman knew their faces. They didn't want her to tell the police, so they waited and made plans. They made plans to kill the woman on the motorbike. A week after the accident, Cristina went back to work. She felt better, and she really wanted to go back to her new job as soon as possible. She only got a headache now at the end of the day, when she was tired. Her mother stopped visiting her in the flat, but she bought a lot of food. She put it in the fridge so that Cristina didn't have to go shopping for a few days. Cristina went back to her old life. She wanted to go back to the gym, too, but it was too early. "Be careful for a week or two," the doctor said. "Don't do too much. Remember, you were lucky. You can't remember the accident, but it was a bad one. You lost your memory, and you were lucky not to lose your life." For 2 weeks, Cristina worked on the Impressionist exhibition. She read a lot about the Paris Museum and made plans for the director of the museum, Philippe Maudet, to visit Buenos Aires. She took the bus to the museum in the morning now, or walked when she had time. She worked all day and then went home. She went to bed early and tried to rest a lot. A few weeks after the accident, Cristina went back to the Recoleta Health Club. She looked through the window into the office and smiled at the 2 people in there, Florencia and Danielle. Florencia was the receptionist, and Danielle was the gym manager of the health club. Danielle was new there, but he already looked at home in the gym. He spent most of his time in the office, but he exercised a lot when the gym was closed to other people. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. Visitors to Argentina often talked about how many blonde, blue-eyed Argentines there were. Cristina changed into her sports clothes and went into the gym. She only did a few exercises, and then she went to have a shower. Danielle met her near the door. "You're back," he said. "Were you on holiday?" Cristina didn't know what to say. She didn't think anybody knew she had been away. "I had a motorbike accident," she answered at last. "I was in hospital for a short time." Danielle looked at her. "Are you okay now?" he asked. "I'm much better, but I only did a few exercises in the gym today. I still have to go slowly," answered Cristina. Danielle smiled, and Cristina felt better. "Be careful then," he said, and then he walked back to his office. Cristina took a shower and thought about Danielle. She didn't know many people in the city center. Most of her friends lived near her parents' house, and she hoped Danielle would become a friend. Cristina was tired that evening, but for the first time she didn't have a headache. She could finally forget about the accident and start living again. On the other side of the city, Roberto Boccuzzi also felt better. He and his brother Carlos bought all the newspapers from the day of the robbery and the motorbike accident and looked at them carefully. They read a lot of stories about the bank robbery, and then, finally, they found a story about the motorbike accident. It said that the woman worked in the Museo Nacional de Bellas Artes. They now knew who the woman who saw them was. Every morning, for almost a week, Roberto stood outside the museum and waited. But he didn't see her. Then, a week after the accident, he saw a woman walking towards the museum. When she got nearer, he saw that it was the woman he was waiting for. He remembered her long hair. He remembered her face. Roberto didn't want her to see him, but there were a lot of people in the street, so it was not difficult to hide. She walked quickly past him, and she didn't look at him. She walked through the door of the museum. Roberto looked at his watch. It was just before 8:30. Roberto went to the bar behind the museum, the Café de las Artes. He bought a cup of coffee and phoned his brother. Then he left the area quickly and took the bus home. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Roberto left his flat again. At the bus stop near his home, he waited for one of the colorful old city buses. The ride across the city center was slow and uncomfortable, but at 4 o'clock he was outside the museum. He saw Cristina leave the building at 4:30. He followed her along Avenida del Libertador. She walked so fast that he almost had to run. After about 15 minutes, Roberto watched Cristina walk in through some glass doors. Above the doors, he saw the name Recoleta Health Club in red letters. Roberto found a bar with tables outside. From his table, he could see the door of the health club. He waited until he saw Cristina leave the gym and followed her home. He followed her for a few more days. He wanted to know if she did the same thing every day. He also wanted to visit the gym before he decided how to kill her.